Welcome to SportsLit. I'm Neil Acharya.
And I am Nathan Sager.
Today on the program, NBA veteran Tyrone Muggsy Bogues. We'll converse about his book, My Life from a Kid in the Projects to the Godfather of Small Ball, written with Jacob Uitti and published by Triumph Books. It was released on April 12th. Tyrone Muggsy Bogues is one of the most identifiable players from an era when the NBA commercially catapulted into the stratosphere of global sport consumption. It was because of his size and because of his play. The two go hand in hand. It's incredible enough that he played 14 seasons in the association at 5'3". Even more impressive, he did it in the 80s and 90s when the league took no prisoners with its physicality. Don't believe me? Nate, I believe there's a few YouTube links that can be referenced.
Yeah, back then it was like you fouled someone, you wanted them to stay fouled. The Detroit Pistons, one being the self-styled bad boys, and all major sports tend to be copycat leagues. So that's sort of in the league. There was expansion from 23 to 29 teams in less than a decade. That's maybe dilutes the talent pool a little, and coaches are they want to win, so they'll institute that mentality.
Well, Muggsy was ready for that no holds barred game, in part because of his life growing up in the 60s, 70s, and 80s in Baltimore. In looking back at his career, though, and we'll get to that in a moment, because he was really supported there, Nate, as you'll point out as well, and that's on equal footing to the background itself. In looking back, he had a great impact in selling two new franchises, in particular the Charlotte Hornets, who he joined at the ground floor with expansion in 1988. Remember, Nate, the Charlotte Hornets, I don't know whoever their marketing manager was, but they were brilliant, or they had a lot of money behind them, because they bombarded the sports apparel market with teal. It wasn't uncommon, and even a place like Kingston, Ontario, that you'd go down to S&R, and this is pre-Jordan. He doesn't have his jerseys aren't particularly selling out at this point. I mean, when I say pre-Jordan, I mean pre-Jordan winning his championships. You might see a Magic Johnson jersey, but it seemed like everyone on the schoolyard had a starter Charlotte Hornets teal jacket or something to do with that team, whether it be a hat or a T-shirt.
Indeed.
Anyway, basically, he was the face of that team at that time. This was before Larry Johnson was drafted. So, again, the marketability. And then when he comes to the Raptors in 1999, they're about to play in a new stadium. They've just left Skydome, and they're going to start playing in the Air Canada Centre. And he joined his friend Del Curry, and they have a lifelong friendship between themselves and their families. And, we'll touch on that a little bit later on in the interview. But again, there was a marketability aspect there, and it directly ties back to his play. He's that good.
Indeed, and it's funny, Neil. I sort of liken when you think of Muggsy Bogues playing in the NBA at 5'3", a lesson that was in a book Magic Johnson would have put out about 30 years ago, and he said, whenever he saw there was a sort of an idea among the players of respect. If you saw a small player, you knew that guy was good, because he always had to prove to people he could play, whereas someone who's won the genetics lottery and is 6'11" had to prove they couldn't play, and I see that all through sports. You think of the smaller scorers in hockey, like Hall of Famer Martin St. Louis, or current NHLers like Alex DeBrincat and Johnny Goodrow, who are like maybe 5'7", maybe 5'8", or knuckleball pitchers in baseball, and left-handed quarterbacks in football. Go back to when reading Steve Young's autobiography, having a college coach tell him, a guy who ended up winning a Super Bowl and going to the Hall of Fame. The coach being like, "You'll never play quarterback here. I don't coach left-handers." So, and coach, people tend to want what's conventional, and obviously Muggsy Bogues being 5'3" was unconventional, but he backed it up, and his game has really stood the test of time. He led the league in assist to turnover ratio 7 times, probably because the ball didn't come up as high when he dribbled. You think out of that scene in Winning Time when they're building in the tension, and Jerry West didn't want to draft Magic Johnson because he smiled too much and he was too tall to be a point guard. Muggsy, smiled a lot, but he also kept the ball down. Pace factor wasn't something I don't think that had entered the NBA vernacular in the 90s, but his Hornets teams were at the top of the league in that they played fast because he, got the ball people to initiate the offense, and he forced turnovers by reading the play. And he's still, top 20 in the NBA in assists per game, and he's still top 20 in assist percentage, which is an obscure stat, but just like it sounds, it's like, what percentage of your teammates' baskets did you assist on while you were on the floor? I really enjoyed the book because you learned where he came from just beyond, some sweeping cliches about the inner city, not to, devalue what that experience is, but you want, instead of just having the rough sketch of it, you understand that he grew up loved, even though economic circumstances were not on his family side, and that, played into, health outcomes and life outcomes for his brother and his dad, and the challenges that he and his mom and sister that they all face in Baltimore. We can relate to that a little, especially, Baltimore's a port city. I live in Hamilton, which is also a port city that's just, been challenged by, deindustrialization. Fun fact, David Byrne of the Talking Heads spent part of his upbringing in both cities and said they were a lot alike, Neil.
Well, that is something I did not know. Yeah, you're right. The way it's written with Jacob Uitti about how he's supported is really interesting to read. And yeah, I mean, going back to his toughness, whatever factors contributed to that, certainly he writes about as a 5-year-old getting hit with buckshot in the arm. And, going to the NBA in that tough era, you look at the first 8 seasons, you can count on your hands how many games he missed. Now, whether that was because, he knew he couldn't pull himself out of a game, maybe he was lower to the, lower center of gravity, whatever it was, he played, and he played consistently.
Yeah, I was impressed. Over time, you sort of forget things and connections. I sort of knew that Muggsy Bogues had played on this legendary high school team, the Dunbar Poets in Baltimore, that went undefeated for 2 seasons in a row, and all 15 players on the team got Division I scholarships. 4 of them played in the NBA. 3 were first-rounders in the same draft, including Muggsy and the late Reggie Lewis. But I had not realized that Muggsy's first NBA playoff game was against the Boston Celtics, and it was the game in April of '93 when Reggie Lewis collapsed on the court from a heart ailment, and then died a few months later after collapsing during a pickup game. And you're just like, wow, like just the fact that that's my friend on the court, and we don't know what's happened to him, and he still kept but I still have to be like the nerve center, the fulcrum of a basketball team as the point guard, and to just keep it together. And it's just like that takes your breath away. And it seems like a lot of that, fortitude that Muggsy got, was imparted by, women in his family and his life, his late mom, his sister Sharon, and of course his, wife Kim Bogues, who had an amazing life arc of her own, starting, going to work in the TV industry and ended up being part of the shows The Wire and Veep, which stars another, I think, Maryland native, someone named Julia Louis-Dreyfus.
Yeah, and you talk about his wife ended up is now, I believe, a chef on sets, right?
Yeah.
There is a thread in here for sure about giving a lot of credit and bigging up women's sport. He coached the Charlotte Sting. You talked about the women in his family, and there is a little note in there again talking about his friend Del Curry. He says Steph and Seth both got their shooting ability, no doubt, from their dad, but their toughness they got from their mother, Sonia. Of course, he knows the family really well.
Yeah, and that's often the case with second, third generation pro athletes. The fathers, he's gone half the time on road trips, right? So it's the mom is
Right.
imparting the discipline, getting them to practice. And in terms of thanks, Captain Obvious observations. I guess the other one that we need to impart, because we're for our listeners, is you got to remember the NBA and WNBA are the hardest combined are the hardest major sports to break into, because basketball is the second most played sport on the planet, but it also has the smallest playing rosters. And in terms of the women's league, there's only 12 teams. We hope it'll get bigger. We hope Toronto would be part of it. But yeah, Muggsy Bogues not only got there, he stayed there for a decade and a half, and before calling it a day and leaving on his own terms. One thing in one line, sort of, it's vaguely aphoristic, but it stuck with me, was just this line that it takes time to build anything good that will last. That definitely seems to apply to how he's gone through all stages, and way he and his wife drifted apart and then got back together before remarrying on his 50th birthday. Very cool. Neil, I guess in terms of wrapping up the intro and getting to what people want to hear, we should mention this is our fourth basketball book episode, and just like the NBA Finals, we're recording this on the day of Game 5. We're tied at 2-2 in terms of episodes with basketball with writers and episodes with former players.
Yeah, that's a good point, Nate. Yeah, exactly. A little fancy stat there. Yeah,
small sample size though.
Hey, you know what? If you want to, hear about any of these or hear any of these episodes, you can go to our website, sportslit.ca, where those books Nate talked about as episodes of Spencer Haywood Rule, the Spencer Haywood Rule, We the North, Doug Smith, and Three Ring Circus with Jeff Pearlman. Those are on our website, as is every episode at sportslit.ca, and you can listen to the episodes and also buy any of the books, including this one we're about to talk about with Muggsy Bogues. So again, the show is about to start. And we're back and very excited to have Muggsy Bogues with us today. So Nate, let's get right into it and take it away with our first question.
Indeed. Nice to meet you, Muggsy. Of course, the subtitle of the book is The Godfather of Small Ball. What do you believe most ties the way you played the game back in the 90s to the current NBA?
Well, the kid from the projects to the Godfather of Small Ball. I mean, the way the game is today, I mean, it's literally, small ball in terms of the positionings, where they kind of don't have any true position these days. I was literally talking about playing it from a small angle, from a small perspective, and giving people an understanding of an idea of what my thought process was in terms of trying to navigate through, those big trees and through the naysayers, I should say. But the game today, I still enjoy it. I love it. But I think the meaning of small ball in regards to today's game is definitely because there's no positions out there anymore.
Oh, true. And it didn't surprise me when I went back and, I'm a stats guy. I looked and saw, wow, your Charlotte teams, they were always up there in what is now become an everyday stat, pace factor. In the more recent times as a follower of the league, when did you see the change to today's game taking place throughout the whole NBA?
Well, that's more or less, it was a transition. It's probably in the later 2000s. I retired in 2001. But you could start seeing the game latter part as it continued to go on the early ons in the 2000s. Right around, I think, 2009, 10, it start to shift. I mean, they start changing the rules. They constantly, have to try to implement and based on the skill set of the players. I mean, now, again, like we talk about 7-footers, back in our day, they play with their back towards the basket. Today's game, they bring the basketball up the floor.
Well, you said it. It's the rules, and That's my question, and the casual fan will now be watching the NBA Finals. So for the casual fan, they're going to hear, "Hey, the league was tougher back then. The rules have changed to create more space." So to that casual fan that just tunes in for the finals, can you explain what the rule changes were, when they happened? You did touch on that, but what the rule changes were and what it did.
Well, I guess they're more catered towards the offensive player. I think they felt like the game was maybe too physical, and one would say, or maybe they felt like the defensive player had more leeway than the offensive player, because back then you used to hand check. We had no 3-second 2.9 rule where you camped in the lane all day long. So the game has been expanded, has been opened up, and again, it's predicated more or less to the skill set today, and plus fans, and I think the league wants to see a lot more entertainment, and that brings more scoring. So in that regards, it makes the game a lot more, again, fun. But now you hear a lot of guys complain about that. The game is too soft. It's not allowing us to play, physical enough in terms of not being able to be a defensive presence as opposed to being just offensively minded.
Well, we're going to ask you about the finals later. We usually focus on the directly on the book, but since you brought it up, that was quite the interesting Draymond Green quote that went viral after, I think it was Game three, where he was calling out all the old guard, saying back in the day, my day, I was tough. He said there's like 3 tough guys like Lambeer and Mahorn, and he said everyone else was getting punked. Did you read that or watch that comment, and did you get a chuckle out of it?
Oh, I'm quite sure everybody get a chuckle out of it. In terms of the tougher guys back then, he don't realize how many tough guys were back then. He missed. Mm-hmm. He just mentioned 2 guys that he probably just seen in the internet. Rick Mahorn and Lambert. I mean, shit, we had Marcus Johnson and all sorts of guys back then that was enforcers. But I mean, and that's what Draymond understand. I mean, that's where it is today, and he speaks it to where he knows how physical it is in terms of how he's trying to play, and in terms of hearing it on the back end in his ear that the game is a lot softer than it is today than it was back then. And I mean, it just, again, as we talked about, it's all about the rules that was implemented.
Before we travel forward in your career, I want to go backwards, and I want to ask you. Well, you just mentioned it. When Nate asked you about the title of the book, one part we didn't mention was it starts off with my life from a kid in the projects to the Godfather of Small Ball. Why was it important for you to have that in the title?
Well, that's where it all begins. That's the beginning. You can't go to the end without talking about the beginning. And what made me who I am, coming from that inner city, the experience that I went through, the things that I endured, the dramatic experience I had to overcome in terms of being shot at the age of 5. I mean, all that kind of made me who I am and made me the player that I was, and had to share, some of that and talk about the blessings as well that was given to me in order to become the player that I was. So we tapped upon a lot of things growing up in the inner city, relationship-wise, people that had touched me growing up, who impacted me, and then, as a player, by the name of Dwayne Woods, being that type of smaller player that I first saw that had success. So, a lot of things that happened that I wanted to mention to give people more of an assessment of who I am.
For sure. And you write in the book that it took time to be able to talk about anything. Where did you need to go to be mentally ready to talk about those things in book form and work with an author about conveying it?
Well, I did one early on in 93, 94, when my pops had passed and a good friend of Reggie Lewis had passed. And then having already to be able to, share some of that and be able to talk about it, it just gave it a lot more feeling. I mean, more comfortability, because again, it was tough even doing that first one, being able to share. I was more of a soft-spoken guy. I didn't want to have to talk about the things that I had to go through in order to be the person that you are. But as you going forward, you know, you never know the things that you go through can help someone else. And that was one of the main reasons that I wanted to share this opportunity, because it's been a while since I had, since the interline of Johnson was out there. And so that's why I want to put this one.
Yeah, let's go into that a little bit. And you work with Jacob Uitti on this, and you obviously opened up in new ways. I want to know, as a player who dealt with criticisms from journalists, and you point out, for example, the Tony Kornheiser quote in the book. How was it being on the other end per se? Now, I know this isn't traditional journalism where he's writing a game story and critiquing, but Jacob Uitti is a journalist, and how was it being on the other side of that and writing this book between the two of you?
It was unique. It was, it was different from my first one, but this was unique, and I really enjoyed Jake working with him, because we was able to capture it and put it in the proper contents, and not duplicate what I did in the land of John's book. This was more of a substance, I should say, and being able to impact not only the players that I played with, coming with Domeyer, but some of the current players in today's game, and like the Stephen Currys and the Chris Pauls of the world. Being able to have the Grant Hill and the Damian Lillard and all those guys to be able to speak upon it, and not knowing, how you affected those, and some of the relationships, not only with the players, but with me and my now current wife, who, when we got divorced, 10 years, and being able to find each other back, after all those years of being separated with one another, and which is kind of unusual. So hopefully a couple can understand those type of things as well.
Any kind of new respect for the craft of writing and journalism at all when doing this?
Oh, always respect it. Definitely, always will. You have a totally different perspective of it, but you got more of a respect of what goes behind the scene, because it's not easy, in terms of putting it all together and making it flow the way it need to flow, and everything need to be in the right proper place. And so you guys are always been at the high regards, but it's even more, now that I had the opportunity to see behind the scenes.
And what do you hope that, especially in the early chapters, what do you hope readers will appreciate about what was sort of happening to your neighborhood in Baltimore while you were growing up, from childhood through your teens?
Well, just not so much just just the individual itself, like a person, just a kid, a young individual, someone that had a passion for something, who just had a really true passion, and he just chased it each and every day. Regardless of what was being said or what was, being criticized or laughed upon, he just believed within, regardless of any situation, any obstacle, any adversity, that he sees something totally different what everybody else sees. And he did not let anybody, take him off of that path and derail him in another different direction.
Yeah, and in that environment too, because you were dealing with a lot around you as well, not just the basketball and being critiqued. I mean, Baltimore was definitely going through some stuff at that time, and still is, right?
Oh yeah, and then that was the challenge within, and it was a challenge once you even walked outside your door, but that comes with the, the passion and the understanding what I was carrying around in my head, and the vision that I was seeing, that I wasn't just limited myself to what I was already faced with, and being able to have that vision, a bigger picture, kept me more focused than people can ever imagine, in terms of the steps that you have to keep taking in order to get to the ultimate goal, which was, being successful in life. It didn't have necessarily to do with basketball.
Well, let us now switch to basketball. And Nate, right early on with the Dunbar Poets. Nate, go ahead.
Yeah. So Bob Wade, your high school coach at Dunbar High, How did he advance your career? What tools did he sort of help you develop to be successful?
I mean, Coach Wade was everything to all of us. I mean, he was a man that been there and done it. I mean, he was a former collegiate athlete. I mean, he served a purpose in each of our lives for different reasons. I mean, a lot of us didn't have fathers in their homes. So being able to have that type of mentor, that guidance, I mean, and being on a team that has so much talent, I mean, he was the ultimate leader. I mean, he understood. I mean, he was very empathetic. He understood where we came from. I mean, he knew how much talent we had on that team, so he made everybody accountable. And he gave us vision, as I alluded to. He gave us vision that you understood what the task was. But most importantly, we had gratitude. We was grateful for wanting to be with each other, but also the understanding the task at hand and how we was able to, conduct ourselves on and off the court because he always preached discipline, character.
And, and he also made you practice in a unique way with some bricks, right?
Well, yeah, that was the means of him getting our mind occupied and getting us ready for the game. And it didn't necessarily have to do with just dribbling a basketball. We practiced with bricks in our hands, sandbags on our back. Like I said, he was a former football player, and we didn't have the type of equipment in our facility. So he pretty much got creative, I should say. But those things worked because in the fourth quarter, our hands became much stronger, and we didn't lose the basketball, turn it over, and all that. And it felt like we was always in the best condition than any other team.
And you write highly about that team as the best basketball team ever. So can you tell the listeners who may not have read the book yet, why were the Dunbar Poets in that era? I think it's the early '80s. Why were they the best? In your mind, the best basketball team out of high school ever?
Yeah, 81, 82, 82, 83. Yeah, we was fortunate enough to go 59-0 for 2 seasons. We had some unbelievable talent. Myself, David Wingate, the late Reggie Lewis, and Reggie Williams, who we all fortunate enough was able to make it in to the NBA. 4 of us, and 3 of us got drafted in the same draft in the first round, which made history that year. But the entire team had all 15 players had Division I scholarships. So being able to have that much talent on the team, and back then the college coaches didn't come to our games to recruit us because we used to beat teams pretty soundly. I mean, double figures. They came to our practice to get a better assessment of our skill set because they felt like there was a better competition, and that's mainly how a lot of us got recruited through that.
Moving ahead to the FIBA World Championships. What did the 1986 FIBA World Championships do for your career, and how common was it for an American to play internationally? Was it something that was done a lot, or were most people just ignoring that part of the game to go to the NBA?
No, that was special. I mean, anytime you get an opportunity to put the USA across your chest, that's always an honor. And then being in college and being a collegiate, organization and being able to go and represent your country in that regards, I mean, that was something that we was all looking forward to. And it definitely, as to your question, it put my career definitely right up there on a level to where now the NBA scouts and the NBA organizations had to now give me a true considered look as opposed to just, maybe, no, I don't think he's too small. But being able to play against those guys and that type of talent, allowed me to be looked at in a different light. And winning a gold medal was such a special moment. Again, back then there was a little terrorism going on at that time, and Steve Curry lost his dad and everything. So it was challenging back then.
Yeah, nowadays, of course, it's the NBA players in international basketball. But back then, the United States sent, the best college players. How much pressure did you guys feel as 21-year-olds that you've got to make sure that the Americans don't lose, because at that point their only loss had been 72, I think, which was kind of a schmozzle.
Yeah, well, I don't think we didn't feel any pressure because we was looked upon as college players and they was looked upon as professionals. And fortunate enough for us, we was the last collegiate team to bring home the gold medal when the '88 team lost. And then 92, then they start sending the dream team in 92, and then that was the end of the college players. But I mean, it was very special back then because, again, we was not supposed to have won. We weren't considered to be the favorites, and the Yugoslavia and as well as the Russian team was the favorites with the likes of the Sabonis, Arena Sabonis, and the late Dragan Petrovic.
Yeah, indeed. Or Vitas Sabonis. There's footage on YouTube of him in his prime at the USSR, and he's what guys are like now, like Luka Doncic. He's 35 years ahead of them. Muggsy, in writing the book, what did it remind you about? Tough, determined women in your life. Your mom, your sister, and your wife Kim Bogues.
Oh, how special they are. How life wouldn't be without women in our life. If this world, if they decided that they didn't want to go to work anymore and want to deal with us anymore and have kids, can you imagine what this world would be like? So they were so inspirational in my life. And it started with my mom. Had no idea what basketball was or what it meant. But she just knew her kid enjoyed playing it, and she just gave me all the support in the world, even though, we was being laughed upon quite a bit. But she always just say, Ty, no one could be an expert on your life. No one knows your potentials or your capability, and they sure can measure your heart. And that's something that always resonated and stuck with me. And then my sister, seeing her play, as playing with the boys, as a small girl, out there competing. And I'm like, oh, man, I can do that. I want to do that. And she just been such that person in my life. And, and then, of course, my lovely wife, being able to have another strong woman that represent and that emulates, my mother and my sister. I mean, it was breathtaking. So it hurts when, you don't have them with you, even to this day. My mom been gone since 2001, and it felt like it was yesterday, and I lost my sister in 2015.
Yeah, you write highly of both of them in the book. And in fact, basically, you were with the Raptors when your mother passed, and that was how you essentially exited the game, right?
Yeah. I just got traded from the Raptors, and it was with the New York Knicks coming off of that season, and my mom got got worse than she was, and I had 3 years left on my contract. And fortunate enough for me, Mark Cuban, who was owning the team at the time, he granted me, and honored my contract all the way up to 2004. He basically just took me off the books because it felt like my salary probably would have put them over the salary cap. So I was saving them a little money, and he did me a favor, so I was so thankful.
Well, thank you for correcting me on that. Yes. So back to the theme of strong women. You played against Nancy Lieberman, and you write about that, and again write very highly of her game. So for those out there that don't know who Nancy Lieberman is, who was she, and how would you judge her game?
Nancy Lieberman was one of the most unbelievable female players of our game. And people talked about the Cheryl Swoops and all that. Nancy Lieberman was right up there as among all of them. I mean, she was a guard, a little white guard who had so much skill, and I had the opportunity to play against her in the USBL. And before I joined the NBA, they had a league took place before the draft, and I took part of it. And I had the opportunity to play against her. And boy, was I fearful a little bit because I couldn't let a woman show me up on the biggest stage that I have been on. So I wanted to make sure that I try to contain her as much as I possibly could and not let her get by me. And we always have a good chat about that game, and I respect the call so dearly.
And you moved on to coach in the WNBA. So you've with the Charlotte Sting. So you really got to see the progression of the women's game. From playing against Nancy Lieberman to seeing the creation of the WNBA and coaching in it. So that must have been quite an experience to see that all unfold in front of your eyes.
Absolutely. I was so thankful to have an opportunity to be able to coach the women because my opportunity of watching them and seeing them college and all that, and during my days, I mean, you never really dive into and really looked at the true essence of what they put into it. I mean, they've really focused on the fundamentals of the game of basketball. Not saying that they're not athletic, but they truly focus on the fundamental of the game. And I was so not surprised, but I was so thrilled to see how professional, how skilled they were. They came in every day professional. They treated the game as such, and they wanted to get better. And that's something that, again, the game is always going to be in a good place when you got ladies looked upon in that way. And I hope that the WNBA do a lot more of really promoting the women's game and the stuff that we talked about, how strong women are. I think they don't get their due in terms of how they are really affecting and impacting the game.
And maybe we'll see a franchise in Toronto.
Maybe so. I hope.
Speaking of the game evolving, and before we get into your NBA career, by the time you had hit your prime, you filmed Space Jam, you had your own documentary, an action figure. Again, seeing as how we just talked about the game evolving, how did you see this play out in real time of how, what we had Spencer Haywood on the podcast a few years ago, and he played at a time when the NBA, I think the finals were tape delayed, so when you're coming up as a high school guy, the NBA is kind of sinking a little bit. But by the time you're at your prime, you've filmed Space Jam, as I just said, and the league is just catapulted into the stratosphere. How surreal was that to experience in real time?
Yeah, the league. I mean, it's a global game. I mean, you got so many different players from different countries that take part in our game now, and you got to credit that, of course, from the late David Stern, and then Adam Sullivan just taking it to a whole new level. And it's great for the game. I mean, it's great to have kids all around the world thinking and dreaming, believing that they could be this Michael Jordan of the world. This Doncic, this Luka Doncic, the Greek freak, Giannis, and I can't even get Antetokounmpo.
Nate, you want to take a crack at that?
What's Giannis? Good God Almighty.
Oh
yeah,
man,
I'm better at spelling it than saying it. Giannis Antetokounmpo.
Yep, Antetokounmpo.
It's that one
the
syllable
alphabet
just hiding in there.
Yeah, but it's just amazing where the game has gone. I mean, we got people always ask me, do we think we're going to see another 5'3" kid? And I told them I wish, I hope, because we got kids now in the Philippines that's dreaming, in India that's dreaming that possibly could want to play in the NBA. And these are countries that not known for, height. So who knows what may happen? But I'm just thankful for the game, where it's gone and how it's gone, because it's very entertaining.
Yeah.
When you, I mean, I'm assuming you were probably just so focused on just making the league. But I mean, as a kid, I mean, what was the experience of even trying to watch an NBA game on TV? I mean, was it there for you, or was it the type of thing you had to seek out because the league was sinking at that time?
Yeah, I wasn't a big watching NBA back then.
Mm-hmm.
Even though I had the Baltimore Bullets in our neighborhood, in our backyard, but it wasn't a big thing back growing up until I got to college. And again, it still was delayed games. As you alluded to, the games were not being showed over in certain countries, and they had to kind of wait and go and see a tape delayed. And now today, I go overseas, we get it live. I'm sitting there doing a game where I'm watching it 7 o'clock in the morning in Singapore, based upon because of, the game has gone and TV partners have came on board to take part in our game.
In regard to your success as a businessman through basketball, I'm going to read you a part from your book, and then I want to ask you a question about anybody trying to become profitable in whatever sport they play, any player. So you write, "I'm no fool. I know none of this would have happened if I wasn't a good basketball player who put up numbers and made my team better. If I was averaging 1 point and 1 assist in 3 minutes of garbage time on a team that never made the playoffs, no one would have ever called me on my phone or sent me any movie job offers." So my question is, there's players across pro sports, across anything right now, they want to brand themselves on Instagram. And how important is it to have How important is it for your play to drive your brand, quote unquote?
Important to drive my brand.
Well, not yours, for anybody coming up, because it seems like a sexy thing to say, hey, listen, like, I'm a whatever player in this league, automatically my brand should be worth something. But I mean, Jordan's brand wasn't Jordan's brand because, Jordan looked like Mike. It was because he won,
Well, absolutely. And your play should always dictate, how or what your extra activities or extra endorsement may be or this and that. But in today's world, social media, because everybody is a brand these days, and hopefully they understand that and how to, keep their market their way in the right way to keep themselves to where they've been successful. Because everybody don't have the likeness to be the LeBron James or
right.
the Steph Currys of the world.
You were a veteran player on some teams with some young stars. I mean, it's same situation isn't now that it was then. But do you think it's up to some of the vets, to maybe tell some of the young guys, hey, listen, let's stick to the play, and then everything else will follow.
Oh, the vets, yeah. Well, the vets, that's what they do. That's what they pretty much understand, and they how to lend their leadership. And when people, been around the game as long as they have, and people respect that, then that's what comes with the territory. And I think that a lot of young players really need that, especially today.
Mm-hmm. And Muggsy, one line in the book that of yours that literally is just like looping in my head is, it takes time to build anything good that will last. I tied that to, being a longtime fan of the Toronto Raptors and their climb to winning the NBA title in 2019. I was just curious to know, you were on their very first playoff team, and what were the feelings like for you when they won that title, albeit against a team you had also played for?
Oh, it was special. I mean, and you're right, it does take time to build something special, and people got to understand that how to be patient when they got a plan. I mean, you can't deviate from the plan. That's what it's all about. But when you're patient enough and then you see that plan come to a fruition, man, it's so awesome. And I'm so thankful to being part of the organization that got to witness, that they was able to accomplish that goal, because it was so great, not only for the organization, but for the entire country, because that's what the Raptors, and that's what they mean in terms of support. And when you have that type of support, you should be rewarded in the ultimate goal, which is the Larry O'Brien Trophy.
What were your experiences when you first got here? Coming off the plane, I think you read about it being cold. Where did you live in Toronto? And I know you're really happy to have Steph Curry's dad, Del Curry, with you here, and that's the reason why you signed.
Well, yeah, Del and I signed together. I mean, we pretty much stayed downtown. I did anyway. I stayed at Harbor 99 building,
mm-hmm.
very close to the ACC arena. And that was something that I was, so grateful for. But I just love the atmosphere, the culture in Toronto. Of course, I'm there all the time now. But it was a culture shock at the beginning, but I got accustomed to it very quickly.
And I mean, in a sense too. I mean, aside from your great play, and I mean, they're building with around a brand with Vince per se. You did bring a cachet, right? I mean, you were an attraction around the league that they could build around as well. I mean, do you remember them as part of signing there wanting to market you?
Well, yeah, I felt that as well. I felt like I had marketable ability in terms of being part of the organization, and they felt that. And the leadership. We had some character guys on the team, myself, Charles Oakley, Antonio Davis, Kevin Willis, along with the T-Mac and Tracy McGrady, Doug Christie as well, D. Brown. So guys who had, national names, but it felt good knowing that you were being part of something that could lead to something special.
So in the text, you write about in Charlotte, had Charlotte not traded Kobe, and you have the vision of throwing him alley-oops and all that stuff. My question, I guess, in relation to Toronto, keeping that in mind is, when it comes to Vince and T-Mac, had they shown more maturity and commitment to play a more complete game as Butch Carter wanted? How do you foresee any the success happening sooner had they committed to that?
It would have been scary between those two. I mean, they was young, and everybody saw them as Michael and Scotty, and they really had that type of ability. Of course, as you saw throughout their career, the type of level that they was able to display on a nightly basis. But I really believe if they would have stayed together, if they was a little more mature, but again, they were so young, they would have seen it, and they could have shared it, and they would have won for quite some time.
Go ahead, Nate.
Yeah, and sticking with the expansion motif, LeBron James last week said he wants to own a team in Vegas. There's talk about the league when the next TV deal's negotiated, there'll be new teams. As someone who played for two franchises when they were getting started, what advice would you give to someone about starting a team from scratch in the NBA now?
Oh, well, man, I couldn't give him any advice. I mean, I'm quite sure he understands it more than I do. But the best thing is, dude, when you're putting any, infrastructure together, it starts from the top. Leadership, making sure that you got everything is in place, everybody in place, and then making sure that, you do the greatest job in the world in terms of bringing in the right players.
Well, speaking of, in the book, Dick Vitale basically says, hey, Muggsy played in the league for 14 years at 5'2" or 5'3". People ask me what the chances are of seeing another Muggsy Bogues. I don't think I'll see it in my lifetime. So my question to you is, for that to happen, would it take someone like you to actually be in a position of power with the team to take a chance on a guy, whether he's out of the Philippines or whether he's out of Baltimore?
I hope it don't take that in terms of having someone to make that determination that a guy is talented as a guy that size, that he will be given an opportunity. It's all about how he impacts the game and how he's out there really impacting the game in a way. And I was able to do that. I was able to do it in a way where scoring out always wasn't at the forefront. Defensively, just being able to change the team, running your team. So it all depends on whoever that individual is and how strongly he's displaying his impact on the floor. Because what I wanted to do, I wanted to make sure, no doubt, that I belongs on that floor with the best of them. And being able to do it is being able to perform with the best of them.
You brought up the Philippines specifically. Did you notice you're getting a lot more fan mail from that part of the world, and maybe even people looking up to you that want to play in the NBA from there?
Well, I do get quite a bit fan mail from the Philippines, and I'm thankful for it, as well as some of the other countries. But yeah, it's a fun city. It's a fun size country that I always say. We at that fun size, and we all relate to one another. But if we can always inspire someone, and like I say, I believe, hopefully in my lifetime that I can see that player. I mean, my grandson, he's a little taller than me, so he's beyond 5'2". Mm-hmm. So he won't be that one. But he's small in stature. He might be another 5'5" or 5'5" guy out there playing. But hopefully we can get a 5'2". I want a 5'2".
I guess in closing, why did you feel compelled to address that Michael Jordan rumor in the book? They tried to finally quash it.
Well, it was. People kept asking about this and that, and I'm like, because they really took it serious. I'm like, really? I played all these years, and you tell me when I at the 10th year of my league, in the league, that somebody gonna say something that's gonna derail me. So I had to put it in context of what all happened and how I had surgery and so forth for people to understand, I guess. But again, they still probably don't want to believe it.
Can you give our listeners a little bit of background on what the rumor was and when it happened?
Well, the rumor was they said Michael had called me, and that's why I say, it's in today's world, you got to be careful how you call people,
right?
And the naming, and and they said that he called me a midget, which would have been okay. I'm comfortable with my size. I feel I'm okay with who I am. So for someone to call me a midget or low fat, whatever it is, is that gonna take my confidence away? That was a little more ridiculous, and that was being said that he called me a midget And from that, I missed a shot, and my career hasn't been the same since.
Right. And that was it, I think, was it the playoffs, right? In
Yeah,
95 or 96?
94. It was 94,
Right.
and 94 playoff, 94, 95. And then I missed the entire season after that because of my knee.
Right. Yeah, well, quite obviously, one of those horrible misinformation things that we see far too much, and so yes, that's why you dispelled it. Nate, you have a couple of questions.
Yeah, it sounds like that was maybe just a bit of an urban legend that people couldn't, refute because not everything was on the internet yet. But Muggsy, I kind of wanted to ask, when you look back on your career, like what achievement, maybe statistically, are you proudest of?
Well, you know what? I never look at anything in regards of the game and the accolades, individual accolades. I always go back to the very first day that it all happened when I got drafted. I think that moment kind of did it all, not only for me and my family, but for a small kid that still believed that he could be drafted highly. Go up there, shake the commissioner's hand, put that hat on just like anyone else. People don't understand how big a deal that is, and that's the beginning of it.
I want to ask you. Sorry, Nate. Did you have another one?
Oh no, I should point out. Yeah, you went 14th overall, and I admit that kind of went against my expectations. I figured, oh, this guy, Muggsy must have played his way in as like Fred VanVleet did with the Raptors, or
12 overall. 12. You took me down 2 spots.
12. Yes, pardon me. I was thinking of your jersey number.
Yeah, and that first year you write quite candidly about Washington. I mean, it made me think about what were they thinking if they they didn't really play you the way they should have, right, in that first year.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of it, yeah, they didn't. We had a change of coaches. Kevin Lockery was my original coach, and then they got Wes Unseld a latter part of this during the probably at the 15, 20 games during the season, and then Wes was from the old school. May he rest in peace, and he liked that old style game. We had those type of players, and the late Moses Malone, Bernard King, and Terry Catlers and those guys. So that's what they felt comfortable with.
They wanted to play a little bit bigger, and then that kind of
a lot slower.
That's what you said. Yes, slower. They wanted to play slower. Which, yeah. So one of the last questions I have is, there seemed to be a tone of a Hall of Fame push in this book. When we interviewed Spencer Haywood, there seemed to be a push towards, he wanted people to recognize the Spencer Haywood rule. How important is it to you I mean, obviously, I guess that's a pretty basic question. Anyone would want to get to the Hall of Fame, but I mean, was that a subplot to this book? Did you think the timing of releasing it now, is there any kind of motivation to kind of get that ball rolling?
No, not for me. I mean, that's for other people to judge and decide if I'll need to be part of that fraternity. I just played the game and played it the best of my ability and try to, show the world that everybody is capable, no matter how big, tall, or short he is. If they have the ability, then they should be given that opportunity. And that's what I want to more or less kind of make sure that everybody understood, and just to, kind of give a behind the scenes of what it took for me to get to the place that I got to, and the people that impacted me, the people I impacted. And hopefully that, by being more of a heartfelt motivation type of inspirational book, that someone can look at their situation and possibly not dwell on what they think is a negative and more or less turn into a positive.
To forego our commitment of being evergreen, I got to ask you, the finals, we're going to release this probably just ahead of Game 6. Tonight is Game 5. Steph playing with that foot injury the other night. Was that a flu game-esque type of performance from him? And what have you been seeing in that final? Give us any of your input on what you've seen so far. The series is tied 2-2 NBA Finals right now between Golden State and Boston, and what you're seeing going forward.
I'm loving this series. I am truly loving this series because you got two of the best defensive teams out there, as well as one of the most offensive juggernauts that they're going up against. So seeing the strategy, the game planning, how to let one be effective than the other. It's been beautiful. And watching, Boston and their first time and coach being able to impact the game with these guys and have them playing lights out basketball is unbelievable. But watching Steph and just seeing his whole maturation of who he is and what he is, and at this stage of his career, 34 years old, still putting up these type of numbers, and the numbers to where he's got to carry the load because of certain, performance of some of his teammates. And watching him, it just brings you joy knowing that this is the kid that you was given that airplane ride at the age of 4 years old in the locker room, and now is considered the greatest shooter ever been lacing up to play in the NBA. I mean, it's remarkable.
In regards to his foot in the last game, I don't think any of us know how badly it was injured, but I mean, if you look at that game 4, in terms of his career and in terms of just the progression of NBA legends, and they always have like a certain game, sometimes they point to, was that one of those games?
Absolutely. I'm sorry if you was about to finish it off.
No, go ahead.
No. Absolutely, this was one of those games because he knew the magnitude of it. It was they either went down 3-1. It had been an insurmountable moment to try to overcome. Not saying that it couldn't happen, but it had been challenging. That situation, that type of performance, it needed to be that in order for them to prevail, to win that game. And it couldn't have been anything less than that. And seeing him being able to do it, especially coming off of that ankle, not knowing that he was going to be able to, play it. And to see him go out there and just put that all behind in the rear mirror and be able to display the type of performance. And, he got 10 rebounds as well. That is not lightly. So it's an unbelievable performance. Probably one of the best I've seen, him perform.
Well, we know the history you have with that family, and it goes back to Charlotte and Toronto, and it's an amazing connection. And for those that want to know more about it, they can read about those airplane rides in the book. It was released in April 12th. And Muggsy, we're so glad that you took the time to talk to us today about the book, and we hope it continues to be successful for you.
Well, thank you guys both. I appreciate you having me on, and I look forward to seeing you all hopefully sooner than later.
Yes, come back to Toronto. We'd love to see you. Okay, thanks.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Muggsy.
Thanks, guys.